G'day everyone, welcome back. This time we're going to keep working on the new power plant. New, or it will be new when we're done, for Kiara. Now there's been, what are we up to? I think 3 videos on this so far. This would probably be the 4th. Quick overview. This is a straight 6 turbo diesel marine engine. It's BMW 3.6 litre, 160 horse, I think, something like that. Anyway, I got it for nothing. C's solid. We stripped it down, assessed the damage. It is rebuildable, so that's what we've done. Last episode, we went through and we essentially prepped everything or prepped the block for rebuild and the cylinders, or the liners, because this is a wet sleeve engine. Did that, got the crankshaft installed, and sort of left it at that. Now this episode, by the end of the episode, I would like to have this engine more or less fully assembled. Won't be running. There's still a fair bit more that's going to happen before I can hit a key, but I want it fully assembled. Now the big sort of milestones for that will be we have to get all the liners in. So they're the liners. Pistons go up and down in those bad boys. We've got to get them in. There's a few measurements and things that have to happen to make sure we get it right. I was going to do a bit of a static balance on the engine just to make sure it was all good. I went through and weighed all the pistons. They're within 1 gram of each other, so we're going to skip that step. There's no need to balance it. It's fine. So essentially, liners, pistons, cylinder heads need to get completely gone through. We're going to lap all the valves, put all that back together. Then we need to get all our timing sorted. Now off camera, I did reinstall the camshaft and the lifters. Nothing fancy there. If you want to see how it come apart, go back 2 videos. And they just drop out the bottom, you pull the cam out. So nothing wild. But yeah, right now we're going to assess the depth of the liners in the block, and then we have to put shims under them. So I'll show you how you work that out. And we basically just keep going. So, all right, before we go, I just want to say an absolute massive thank you to everybody and anybody who has watched any of the videos, especially commented. I just hit the limit of, or not the limit, the threshold to essentially monetize the channel, which unfortunately means I'm going to start putting a few ads on. It helps me out massively. It helps the channel, means I can continue. These engines aren't cheap to build. Boats aren't cheap to own or run. But it's about the only way that I'm going to be able to keep up being able to do this project or do all these projects and bring them to you in the best possible manner and the shortest time frame I can. So again, massive thank you to everybody. Sorry about the ads, but it's all for a good cause, I promise you, and I'll make it worth your while to watch the ads. So all right, on with that. Subscribe and let's get to work. All right, so here's the procedure. So these liners need to protrude. They need to sit slightly higher than the deck height so that they crush the gasket. Now this is what stops water from coming up into the top. There's water all around here, hence they're a wet sleeve liner. And when they sit higher, the head gasket and everything crushes them down, crushes the gasket. But that gasket needs to be the right thickness. Now the book tells you to insert liner without O-rings. So the O-rings seal the bottom side of the water jacket. So you insert without the O-rings and without gasket. And you measure the depression. So without the gasket, these will be recessed at the block. So you do that. This particular one come up, it was 3 thou under. Now it wants to be between 2.5 thou and 4 thou above. So I went with a 6 thou shim. That puts me 3 thou above. So that's basically it. I mean, the book tells you the actual numbers that you need, but the kits come with, so I'm not sure if you can see, but the kits come with, what do we got, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 thou shims, 6 of each just in case. So you just work your way through, and then, like I said, you reinstall, check your height. Now I know that this is now sitting, it's about 3 thou and 2/10 above, and I'm doing that with a dial indicator. Technically it's not the right tool for the job in the cradle it's in, you should have a deck dial. So they're basically a big bridge that comes across, and the dial indicator is hard mounted. You can slide them around, but these work every bit as good if you're careful. So you just sit the base on, make sure you're all nice and tight, and then you can slide from between your two surfaces and take your readings. They work just fine. Like I said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Just because you don't have the exact right part number tool doesn't always mean you can't do it. You just need to be a bit more aware of what you're doing. So yeah, other than that, I've got to put 3 O-rings in the bottom, and then it all just goes together. So as you can see, I've done 5. That's the last one, or the first one, depending on what way you want to count it. And then we're going to get it done. After that, it's pistons on rods, rings on pistons. They go in the block. All right, now we're getting down to the pointy end of it. We've got all our pistons and rings laid out, and probably one of the most time-consuming parts of putting together any piston engine is measuring our ring gaps and adjusting them if necessary. Now, I did already jump a few steps, did some preliminary measurements, and they are fine. The book says between, find it now. Why didn't I keep it on the page? That's poor planning. So the book says between 15 and 25 thou. So that's the gap between the rings when they're installed in the bore. I'll show you that in a second. Anyway, they're all sitting at about 18 or 19 thou, so they're well within spec, which is good. I did also measure the piston to bore clearance, and again, it's all within spec. So I think we're right. We're going to put it all together now. So I'll show you how to measure ring gaps, and then I'm going to put you on time lapse, and it's just install rings, get them in the holes. Process is pretty simple. You want to make sure you get the ring up the right way. So these rings have got top labelled on them, if that shows up. Slip them in very carefully. Rings are surprisingly brittle. And just sort of roll them over. Now, you got to sit them square in the bore. So we come in with a piston, just push them down about halfway into the travel of the bore. You don't really want to measure right at the top, and you don't want to measure right at the bottom. You want them about halfway. Now, the ring gap is not where you can see it. Why didn't I put that in the right spot? Let me take you off the thing. So the gap is over here, and essentially you just come in with a feeler gauge and measure your ring gap. It's pretty self-explanatory, but you do that for every ring, every bore, every piston. And then once you know they're right for that particular piston or that particular bore, you line them up, and that's where they stay. Now, if you do have to adjust them, you just file them out. You can buy special ring filers, or you can use an ordinary file. It just takes a lot longer. So we're going to slap them all on the pistons and lube them up and get them in the holes. Alright, well, as you saw, they're all in, they're all torqued, 61 foot-pounds for anybody who's playing along at home, and it even moves, rotates, actually rotates beautifully, to be honest, which is good. So, I'm going to put that back at top dead center so all my timing marks line back up again, because it's right about now, by the way, that we're going to start closing this engine up, and I want it number one, top dead center, with all the timing marks lined up. So there, up there, so that way we know where it is, and we can put the ejector pump in and set everything. So next step is we're going to get our oil pickup, which is sitting over there, all cleaned up, ready to go. Oil pickup, sump, then we can start putting the heads on. So that's a pretty big step. But yeah, I'm really keen to get this sump on and this bottom end done. Alright, sump on, all the pistons are in. We have ourselves what's referred to as a short block, or full rotating assembly. That's not where we're going to stop. We're going to keep going because I feel like that's probably not quite enough sort of for this video. I feel like I've still got a bit of time this weekend. I can get some more done. So this is where things start to speed up a little bit. So trying to getting the block and everything together, rings, pistons, bearings, like you saw, it's very labor intensive. A lot of checking, measuring, checking, rectifying if need be. It takes a long time. It's a slow process. From here on out, it's more or less strip, clean and assemble. So that's basically what we're going to do. I've got some spare heads, so there's 6 here obviously, and then there's 2 here. That one was an original off this engine, and it had the smashed injector down in there. I could get it out, but it's not high on my list, not when I got spares. This is the one that was sitting, that's the one that was sitting on number 6, so it's all really heavily pitted. We started to clean the valve seat up. If I had to, I'd run it, but I don't have to. I've got options. So I think, just looking at it, possibly these two might have been, or either way, they all measure the same. They're identical heads. With an individual head engine, you do have to make doubly sure that they are all exactly the same width. So that way, because they have common clamp blocks. So you're going to make sure they're all the same width. So you try not to drop them on the surface like that, because, it's bad for it. Anyway, moving on. We're going to pull all the valves and just inspect the seats and then put them together, but that also lets us wash them and clean them properly, and then they can go on. There is one job I have to do. So these are the clamp plates, or the riser blocks that go at the end. So because there's a common bolt that goes down here that clamps the head, well, there's no head at each end, so they've got these plates. Now, the original head gasket, I don't think I have one here, were individual head gaskets. There were 6 of them. And when you go the new style, they no longer do that. So the new style runs sets of 3. And just because of the way that it's sort of laid out, the clamp block now sits on the head gasket, whereas previously it didn't. So you have to machine the thickness of the gasket off that way, so it doesn't sort of sit proud, which is fine. I'll put them in the mill and do it. I do actually have, somewhere in amongst my paperwork, I do have the sheet for it with the specifications, so we'll do that as well. But yeah, dump them in the tub, scrub them, check valve seats, and install them. And there is something we do to head gaskets that I'll show you that you must do, as far as I'm concerned. My humble, semi-professional opinion, but we'll get to that. Way longer than I expected. So we're going to strip them all down. I got all the studs and everything out of them too, so like the studs that the manifold slips over, I got all them out so I could better clean up all of these mating surfaces, which I did, and same with the top too. There's 2 long studs here. Pulled all them out so I could actually go through and clean them up properly. Lapped all the valves, so they're all good. Now, bit of a reason why it pays to have a proper look at every aspect of things when you're pulling them apart. So, if this one will cooperate for me, I ended up, so this was the head I thought I was going to use. It looked really good. There were no sort of issues with it that I could see. This was the cylinder head that was on number 6, which was our C cylinder chock-a-block full of corrosion. Now you can see, obviously, there's pitting. It's actually not very deep, but it's pitted, right? This one, this was a spare that I got out of the parts engines. I thought it was good. It's not. I don't know if it's been overheated before or whatever. The valves themselves, well, it's probably not really going to show up, but they were quite hammered. They had a big lip on them. But the biggest issue is that if you can see the witness marks, you can see we're really shiny down here, dull, shiny, dull, and shiny. This head's not flat at all. This center section is, oh, I'm not sure if it's fair to say the center section's raised or these outers are depressed, but either way, it's not flat, and it's nowhere near it. This one, on the other hand, when I come and had a look at it, the valve seats are actually in really good condition. I did lap them, obviously. The valve seats are in really good condition, and yes, it's got pitting, but it's all inside of the gasket area. So it's not going to affect sealing. The only other big concern I have with this cylinder head is that it's got decent corrosion there, so it doesn't leave much of a sealing area for the gasket. I don't think that's going to be an issue personally. There's also another one somewhere in amongst them that has a very similar thing. But yeah, this head looks better from sort of the outside, but really once you actually measure it and take your time and assess it correctly, like assess it completely, it's not, it's junk. You could machine it, but then if you trouble is, if you machine one head, you need to machine all the heads to the same height, because like I was saying before, there's clamp blocks that separate them, and if you've got one head smaller than the other, clamp block will sit sideways, you end up with uneven pressure. So you're sort of a bit snookered there, because you can't just do one head. So anyway, like I said, all stripped, all valves done. I'm going to go through and I'm just going to run these surfaces on the block. So that was how I cleaned up the surfaces, the combustion faces. Just put them on the block here. So this is a very flat magnetic chuck with some emery on it. That's 400, so it's quite fine for this. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead, and I might even swap to a slightly coarser emery just to do these, not that one, to do these faces, just so they get a good contact bite with the gaskets, and then they go back in the wash tub for the last time, clean them all up, and reassemble them. Cylinder head assembly time. Everything's cleaned, dried, prepped, ready to go. So springs, collets, retainers are in there. We're good. Coffee, gotta have that. So we're just gonna basically smash it together. This will take a little while, so I've got the time-lapse camera set up, and we're just gonna make it happen. So yeah, we'll lube everything up as it goes together. I'll probably pop the rocker arms off the pedestals. Oh, but that's okay. We'll worry about that once the heads are on. Can't do anything with the rocker arms just yet. Rightio, time-lapse, and get these heads fully assembled. Right, yeah, they're all done. One step closer. So we can get it. So they measure 90 or 90.02. So they're ready to go. I measured sort of all of them, and they vary between 90.00 and sort of 90.004. Or sorry, 04. So that's about 2,000. It's about a variance of 2,000 between them all. I'm just going to share something that's a little bit of a, being a machinist, it's a bit of a pet hate of mine. That's the size there, so the 90 there. Now, it's kind of hard to read because it's a really crappy photocopy, but it's 90, that's the tolerance, plus 0 minus 0.00. Probably doesn't mean much to many people, but like I said, being a machinist, that's really frustrating. I hate it when there's no actual tolerance. When you start working with this sort of stuff and you start doing machining, there is always a tolerance of some description. You can't have, nothing measures 0, 0, 0. It just doesn't. And especially with this being an engine component, you need to be sort of one side or the other of the line, because like I said, nothing is exactly 0, 0. There's always a difference in measurement. That should be, in my opinion, 90 minus 0 plus, I don't know, say, what did they measure? About 2,000. So plus 0.002, so 2,000. So no smaller than 90, but it can be 2,000 bigger. That's how a tolerance should read. Anyway, end of rant. That's just a pet annoyance of mine. I hate it when there's no tolerances put on things, especially, you know, people come and ask you to make something in a machine, tell them, they go, oh, I want it, you know, 100 mil. And you go, okay, well, where's it going? Oh, it's going here. And you look at the job and it's like, well, 101 won't fit, but 99 will. So, you know, you try and make it as close as you can, but if you were to make it 101, it wouldn't fit. So, anyway, as I said, end of rant. Means nothing to very few people, I'm sure, but that's just one of those things. But they're right. So, now, the very next step is we can put these cylinder heads on the block. No, we can't. What we have to do, sorry, I take that back one step, we have to prepare the head gaskets. Now, something that I have found over the years that if you don't do, you will not always end up in trouble, but if you do it, you're sort of pretty well, it's a really good sort of saving. You use a product called copper coat. Now, I'll show you the tin in a sec. Yeah, I can't see it right now. I'll have to dig it out of the pressure packs. Anyway, product called copper coat, and you spray the gasket surfaces. I only do MLS gaskets, the multi-layer steel gaskets. I don't really do them on the fabric style ones. So you spray them with copper coat, and it's basically it's sort of like a really high temperature glue, but it also fills in little voids and things. So that's what we always do. Alright, took some digging, but I found it. So this is the one we use, the Duplicolour brand. There's other brands out there. I believe there is actually one that is copper coat. But anyway, this is the one we use. So long as it's copper gasket cement, you'd be better than sort of nothing. Yeah, we'll spray it. So I'll probably give them a quick hit with some brake clean just to get the oil residue off them, just gently, because you don't want to pull any of the coating off. So do that, spray them, let them tack up, and then we get them all, seat them, and then heads go on and get locked down. Alright, so I was just going through and making sure that I had all my head bolts and everything ready, and change the plans. So I was going through, I thought I'd open the manual and have a bit of a look at the torque sequence. What it wants me to do, and it makes sense, being an individual head engine, is that you basically sit the heads on and you hand tighten all the bolts on the exhaust manifold. Now, what that does is pulls the heads, because the exhaust manifold bolts to this flange. So you need to bolt that on first to get all the heads square to the manifold, and then you do the head bolts up. So let me show you the condition of the exhaust manifold at the moment, or intake and exhaust. So we're going to have to put off putting the heads on, and we're going to have to clean this sucker up. Now I have already pressure tested this. I made up a big blanking plate for the end. So I pressure tested what would be the raw water, or the actual water, sorry, yes. So the exhaust gas comes in and then passes in and around some tubes that run through, which we'll pull out in a minute, because I do want to pull them out and inspect them, and you do that at this end here. So we'll do that. I'm going to pop these covers off. Hopefully I've got gaskets. I might check to make sure I've got gaskets for them first. And basically we're going to go through and inspect it all, clean it all, so that we can put the heads on. This is why it pays to read the manual, and I should know that, but anyway, here we are. I was mistaken. It's actually, there's no tubes in there, it's just a straight water-cooled casting. So you can see like the way it's cast in there, the runners just go around. It's just, I guess, designed to just cool the exhaust. You can sort of see up in there, it's just one giant water passageway. And it's pretty clean too. So yeah, I think what we'll do is just take to it with the wire brush on the angle grinder, clean all our faces up, and basically we're done. That was that was not as big a job as I was thinking. So let's do that. I did pop one of these off. Obviously, as you can tell, there is a gasket under it, and I don't believe I have them. So I'm not going to take, those two don't show any signs of leaking. As I said, I've actually pressure tested this with water, so they don't leak. So I'm going to leave them. I'll have to make a new gasket for that one, but no big deal. So here is, I guess you could call it a mock-up. Actually, in reality, it's a bit more than that. So there's no head gaskets under these heads. They're just sitting down now. They're sitting on the liners, so you've got to be a little bit nice about them. Manifold's on. I had to go through and put all the studs back into the heads. That was a bit of a mission trying to figure out, because there's 3 different length studs, and yeah, anyway, figuring out what goes where was a little bit of a trial and error, but we got there. So I really wanted to make sure that I had all the head bolts. There's 3 different styles of clamps. So there's ones with a rounded back, ones with like a half moon style back, and then there's these ones here that are, I don't know, that shape. So I wanted to make sure I had all the right ones of them. I had to go through and count all my washers, because the washers go under the heads of these smaller ones. As it turns out, I'm actually missing one, so I have to go back through my parts and find it. It'll be around. I just need to dig it out. So I slid the manifold on, which is good. I'm really glad. I'm glad I read the manual, because I would have stuffed it basically. Not stuffed it, but I would have made errors. But also, I'm glad we went to the effort of sort of cleaning this up and putting this on now at this stage. It's still going to have to come off again, but all the heads are bolted to it now. So all the studs are in, all the nuts are on. So the heads are bolted to this semi-firmly. They're sort of, you know, just finger tight, or slight bit of pressure with a spanner. So they'll still, I mean, they would still move with the head bolts as they pull down. We will pull it down nice and even. But then I can undo all the nuts, pull this manifold off, and then we can paint it, because I really want to get to a point where I can lay paint on this. And I'd like to do it without the manifold. That way I can get paint like up and in between the heads and all that sort of stuff to try and seal it to hopefully stop it rusting. Yeah, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave bolted to the heads, obviously, and I'm going to lift it all off in one assembly. I'll probably either sling it with a forklift, or maybe use the arm of the hoist, sling it with the arm of the hoist, lift it up, clean all the surfaces, prep the gaskets, put the gaskets down, and then essentially lower it straight back on as it is, go through my torque sequence, and then pull the manifold off. I think that's going to be a lot easier than trying to lay the heads on, then slide the manifold on and do it all up. It's just asking for heads to slide, because there's no dowels for these heads onto the block. So the manifolds they'll locate. Anyway, that's what we're going to do. Okie dokie. So heads hanging from the hoist seem to be the sort of the easiest, most controllable scenario. So wipe the block and the underside of the heads all with brake clean, and I'm just about to spray the gaskets with copper coat, and then we're going to put it all together. It's exciting. It's a pretty big step actually. Check it out. Got a little bit carried away. I need to get better at turning that camera on sometimes. Still sometimes a little bit of a second thought. But anyway, yeah, so the last thing you saw, I think, was us, Dad and I, talking the head bolts. those suckers are not going to come off. I don't know if you sort of took note of the rather long extension I was using to do it, but yeah, they're tight. So I think that's where we're going to leave it for this episode. I mean, realistically, that's a lot of work. You know, to go from just a crankshaft in a block to pistons, rings, full rotating assembly, liners, cylinder heads torqued, all the valve clearances have been set, injectors are in, glow plugs are in. I'm fortunate enough to actually have access to a diesel injector tester. So they've all been tested, crack tested, and their spray patterns are more than adequate for what we're doing. Well, injectors either work or they don't, and they work. So that's fine, which is good because they're not overly cheap. You can still get them, but they're not cheap. You're talking a few $100s an injector, so there's a good amount of money saved there. So there's still heaps of work to go, obviously. We've got to clean the rock covers. I'll paint the exhaust manifold. The intake manifold's got to get stripped and cleaned. Turbo, all the lines, the actual cooler, like the front heat exchanger cooler, that's got to get stripped and cleaned. Timing case, turbo, exhaust, wiring. There's still a lot, but in the next episode, it's going to run. I'm not going to finish the next episode until it's running. So I've got a lot of work to do it. So don't expect an episode next week with this thing running. But yeah, that's my guarantee. The next upload you see with this engine in it, it's going to make noise. It might count. Does it count if I stand behind it and go? Brrr? Probably doesn't. Anyway, so yeah, definitely go ahead and subscribe and notifications on so you can see that. Obviously, so you can keep up with everything else happening too. We're going to swap back and start doing some more woodwork on the boat because the rear roof is ready to. It's ready to leave the chat. It's done. It's about, if I don't pull it down, it's going to fall down. And I started measuring up quite a while ago for that. And when I started measuring up, it was already done, and that was about a month after I put it back on the slip. So like February this year. It's stuffed. So that's what we're going to sort of start skipping back to as far as the videos go, and then I can just work on this on the weekends when I get time and get it to make noise. So. All right, well, that's enough of that. I've got heaps of work to do still. And yeah, stay safe. We'll catch you on the next one.